चक्षुरुन्मिलितं श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। नमः ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरद्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So last time we had discussed about Bhava Bhakti and how one can come to the platform of Bhava Bhakti. What can you see?
Prabhuji, Bhava Bhakti.
Okay, fine. Okay, so we had seen the definition of Bhava Bhakti. And then we also saw Swarup Lakshan, that is Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma, then which is made up of the Samvit Shakti and the Ladni Shakti. And the Tatastha Lakshan, Chittamasrinya, softens the heart, and also Ruchibi. And then how one can come to the platform of Bhava Bhakti. One is by practice, that is Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. The example is Narad Muni. Raganuga Sadhana is Chandrakanti. And then by causeless mercy of the Lord and his devotees, 3 ways: words, glances, and good wishes. Vachika Darshan. So we had discussed this. Now, coming to reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti, chapter 18, character of one ecstatic love. So on the platform of Bhava Bhakti, one may exhibit the various ecstatic symptoms, Ashta Sattvic Vikar, like crying, sweating, and standing of hair on end, shivering, and so on. So different ecstatic symptoms could be manifest. But these ecstatic symptoms can also sometimes be imitated, especially by the Sahajiyas who pretend to be very advanced devotees. And for cheap popularity, they may exhibit or imitate such ecstatic symptoms. And so therefore, those symptoms are not very reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. And so therefore, Rupa Goswami describes some reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. One can neither imitate nor conceal these symptoms. So even if one tries to imitate these symptoms, one cannot do it for too long. So therefore, these are reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada describes each one of these briefly. So we will read from the book one by one. Okay, so the first one is Avyartha Kalatvam, never wasting time, but always engaged in devotional service. So somebody can read from the book, Utilization of Time.
Hare Krishna Prabhupada.
Hare.
An alert devotee who has developed a ecstatic love for Krishna is always engaging his words in reciting prayers to the Lord. Within the mind, he is always thinking of Krishna, and with his body, he either offers obeisances by bowing down before the deity or engages in some other service. During these ecstatic activities, he sometimes sheds tears. In this way, his whole life is engaged in service of the Lord without a moment wasted in any other engagement. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so this is Avyata Kalatvam, not wasting time, but utilizing every moment in Krishna's service. As Srila Prabhupada would often say that, quoting Chanakya Pandit, that even if one moment of time is wasted, one cannot get it back by paying millions of dollars or gold coins. And so therefore a devotee is very careful to utilize every moment of time. So that's the first symptom. The second symptom is Shanti, to remain tolerant and patient even amid great disturbance. Okay, so read from the book, Perseverance.
When a person is undisturbed even in the presence of various causes of disturbance, he is called reserved and perseverant. An example of this perseverance and reservation is found in the behavior of King Parikshit, as described in the first canto, 19th chapter, verse 15 of Srimad Bhagavatam. The king says, King says there to all sages present before him at the time of death, "My dear Brahmanas, you should always accept me as your surrendered servant. I have come to the bank of the Ganges just to devote my heart and soul unto the lotus feet of Krishna. So please bless me that Mother Ganges may also be pleased with me. Let the curse of the Brahmana's son fall upon me, I don't mind. I only request that the last moment of my life, all uh, all of you will kindly chant the holy name of Vishnu so that I may realize his transcendental qualities." This example of Maharaj Parikshit's behavior, his remaining patient even at the last point of his life, his undisturbed condition of mind is an example of reservation. This is one of the characteristics of a devotee who has developed ecstatic love for Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so this is perseverance of Shanti. So in spite of there being various disturbances, difficulties, still one continues, perseveres in one's mission. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he had so many difficulties, heart attacks, so many difficulties, but still he continued to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master. So that's Shanti. Third is Virakti, indifference to objects of sense gratification. Somebody else please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Detachment. The senses are always desiring sense enjoyment, but when a devotee develops transcendental love for Krishna, his senses are no longer attracted by material desire. This state of mind is called detachment. There is a nice example of this detachment in connection with the character of King Bharata. In the 5th canto, 14th chapter, verse 43 of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, Emperor Bharat was so attracted by the beauty of the lotus feet of the Krishna that even in his youthful life, he gave up all kinds of attachments to family, children, friend, kingdom, etc., as though they were untouchable tools. Emperor Bharat provides a typical example of detachment. He had everything enjoyable in the material world, but he left it. This means that detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself aloof and apart from the allurements of attachment. Even in the presence of such allurements, if one can remain unattracted by material attachments, he is called detached. In the beginning of course, a neophyte devotee must try to keep himself apart from all kinds of alluring attachment. But the real position of a mature devotee is that Even in the presence of all allurement, he is not at all attracted. This is the actual criterion of detachment.
Okay, so this is the real meaning of virakti or detachment. That means to be detached in spite of the presence of various objects for sense gratification. Still, one is not allured. Like we have all these examples of Maharaj Bharat, Yudhishthira Maharaj, and all these kings. They had everything, but still they were attached to the lotus feet of Krishna. So when one has that higher taste, the attachment to the lotus feet of Krishna, then one can easily give up the attachment to all the material objects. So that's virakti. Next is mana shunyata, pridelessness. Okay, read.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam.
Right.
Pridelessness. When a devotee, in spite of possessing all the qualities of pure realization, is not proud of his position, he is called prideless. In Padma Puran, it is stated that King Bhagiratha was the emperor above all other kings. Yet, he developed such ecstatic love for Krishna that he became a mendicant and went out begging even to the homes of his political enemies and untouchables. He was so humble that he respectfully bowed down before them. There are many similar instances in the history of India. Even very recently, about 200 years ago or less, one big landlord known as Lal Babu, a Calcutta landholder, became a Vaishnava and lived in Vrindavana. He was also begging from door to door, even at the homes of his political enemies. Begging involves being ready to be insulted by persons to whose home one has come. That is natural. But one has to tolerate such insults for the sake of Krishna. The devotee of Krishna can accept any position in the service of Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so this is mana shunyata, pridelessness. So in spite of possessing all the qualities of pure realization, he's not proud of his position. Okay, so in spite of having so many good qualities, so much opulence, so many things one may have, but still one perfectly understands that everything is the grace of Krishna, everything belongs to Krishna. So when one has that proper understanding, then one can be prideless in spite of the presence of many opulences and qualities. Next is Asha Bandha, firm faith that Krishna will deliver one to the highest perfection, even though one feels low and utterly unqualified to achieve it on his own. Okay, read from the book.
Dandot Pranam Prabhuji.
Hare.
Great hope. The strong conviction that one will certainly receive the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called in Sanskrit Asha Bandha. Asha Bandha means to continue to think, because I am trying my best to follow the routine principles of devotional service, I am sure that I will go back to Godhead, back to home. In this connection, one prayer by Rupa Goswami is sufficient to exemplify this hopefulness. He says, I have no love for Krishna, nor for the causes of developing love of Krishna, namely hearing and chanting, and the process of Bhakti Yoga by which one is always thinking of Krishna and fixing his lotus feet in the heart is also lacking in me. As far as philosophical knowledge or pious works are concerned, I don't see any opportunity for me to execute such activities. But above all, I am not even born of a nice family. Therefore, I must simply pray to you, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Krishna, maintainer and beloved of the gopis. I simply wish and hope that some way or other I may be able to approach your lotus feet. And this hope is giving me pain because I think myself quite incompetent to approach the transcendental goal of the life. The purport is that under this heading of Asha Bandha, one should continue to hope against hope that some way or other he will be able to approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, so Asha Bandha means that even though the devotee, he feels low, unqualified, but still he has a firm faith that Krishna is Karuna Sindhu, he is ocean of mercy, he is Bhaktavatsala, he is very dear to the devotees. He's very affectionate to the devotees. He's very merciful, compassionate. And so understanding all these qualities of the Lord, the devotee continues to maintain hope that the Lord will definitely be merciful, even though he is unqualified. And so therefore we find in the examples of great devotees like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, so all these great acharyas, they show that how even though they consider themselves to be very much unqualified, but still they maintain the hope that Krishna will empower them to perform service. And that's how Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, even though he was considering himself lower than Jaga and Madai, worse than the worm in the stool, but still he was attempting to write the Chaitanya Charitamrita on the order, on the instruction of the Vaishnavas. So his hope was the blessings and the mercy of the Vaishnavas and ultimately the mercy of the Lord. So that's where the devotee gets the hope from. He gets the hope from the mercy of the Lord. Similarly, we find Srila Prabhupada also in his Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma. He wrote that he's totally unqualified, even though he's the title Bhakti Vedanta. He doesn't have bhakti, he doesn't have knowledge of Vedanta. And so, but he has hope. He has hope that still Krishna will give him the words by which he can influence the other people. And so therefore, the devotee's hope is dependence on the mercy of Krishna. That's what gives the devotee hope. Okay, next is Samatkanta, eagerness for achieving pure loving service. Read.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Eagerness for achieving the desired success. When one is sufficiently eager to achieve success in devotional service, that eagerness is called Samyukta Khanta. Samukhanta. This means complete eagerness. Actually, this eagerness is the price for achieving success in Krishna consciousness. Everything has some value, and one has to pay the value before obtaining or possessing it. It is stated in Vedic literature that to purchase the most valuable thing, Krishna consciousness, one has to develop intense eagerness for achieving success. This intense eagerness is very nicely expressed in by Bilomangal Thakur in his book Krishna Karnamrita. He says, "I'm eagerly waiting to see that boy of Vrindavana, whose bodily beauty is captivating the whole universe, whose eyes are always bounded by black eyebrows and expanded like lotus petals, and who is always eagerly glancing over his devotees and therefore moving slightly here and there. His eyes are always moist, his lips are colored like copper, and though those lips there comes through those lips comes a sound vibration which drives one madder than a mad elephant. I want so much to see him at Vrindavana." Hare Krishna.
Okay, so this is Samatkanta, intense eagerness to see the Lord, to speak with the Lord. So this, as previously we had discussed, laulyam, intense greed or eagerness, is the price, is the value of the ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. So of course, one may have the great eagerness, but one also has to bring that eagerness into practice by one's great enthusiasm to practice devotional service. Yes, but that eagerness is what is very much required to achieve success on the devotional path. Okay, next is Namagane Sadaruchi, constant attraction to chanting Hare Krishna. Okay, read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hi.
Attachment to chanting the holy names of the Lord. In the same Krishna Karnamrita, there is another statement about the chanting of Radharani. It is said by one of the associates of Radharani, "O Lord Govinda, the girl who is the daughter of King Rishabhanu is now shedding tears, and she is anxiously chanting your holy name, Krishna, Krishna."
Okay, so the devotee has great faith in the chanting of the holy names. We see in the life of Srila Prabhupada how right from the beginning, he had great faith in the chanting of the holy names, that even during his sannyas initiation, even though the Vedic mantras were being chanted by the Brahmanas, Srila Prabhupada was encouraging the devotees to chant. And that we find many years later in 1975 during the opening of the Krishna Balram temple. That time also we see that Srila Prabhupada commented that the real installation of the deities was by the chanting of the holy names. And so that's how a pure devotee has a great attraction and faith in the chanting of the holy names. In fact, again, in the Martanya Bhagavad also, Srila Prabhupada writes that that is what is the only treasure that he has with which he came to the West, and that is his faith in the chanting of the holy names. Next is Asakti Stad Gunakyane, addiction to glorifying Krishna's qualities. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Eagerness to describe the Lord's transcendental qualities. Attachment for chanting the glories of the Lord is also expressed in Krishna Karnamrita as follows. What shall I do for Krishna, who is pleasing beyond all pleasurable conceptions and who is naughtier than all restless boys? The idea of Krishna's beautiful activities is attracting my heart, and I do not know what I can do.
Okay, so the devotee is always addicted. He's always very eager to glorify the Lord. Again, we see that in the life of Srila Prabhupada, how practically from morning to night, that was what he was doing. So from early in the morning, practically midnight, he was glorifying the Lord through his Bhakti Vedanta purports, and throughout the day he was preaching. So that's how he was practically 24 hours a day, he was glorifying the Lord through his books and through his lectures, conversations. In so many ways, he was totally engaged in glorifying the Lord. And the last one is Priti Stad Vasati Stale, attachment for living in the Dham. Okay, please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavata Pranam. Attraction for living in place where Krishna has his pastimes.
We can't hear you.
Attraction for living in a place where Krishna has his pastimes. In the book Padyavali by Rupa Goswami, there is the following statement about Vrindavana. In this place, the son of Maharaja Nanda used to live with his father, who was king of all cowherd men. In this place, Lord Krishna broke the card in which the Shakatasura demon was concealed. At this place, Damodara, who can cut the knot of our material existence, was tied by his mother Yashoda. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna resides in the district of Mathura or Vrindavana and visits all the places where Krishna's pastimes were performed. At these sacred places, Krishna displayed his childhood activities with the cowherd boys and Mother Yashoda. The system of circumambulating all these places is still current among devotees of Lord Krishna, and those coming to Mathura and Vrindavana always feel transcendental pleasure. Actually, if someone goes to Vrindavana, he will immediately feel separation from Krishna, who performed such nice activities when he was present there.
Okay,
Such
fine.
attraction.
Okay. So that's attraction for living in a place where Krishna's pastimes, attachment for living in a dham. And again, we find in the life of Srila Prabhupada, he had a great attachment to Vrindavan, and he was residing at Radha Damodar temple. But then, because he was so attached to the dham, he took the dham throughout the world and established Vrindavan throughout the world. And then later on, of course, towards his final days, he came back to Vrindavan to leave his body. So that's how a pure devotee is always attracted to living in the dham. So these are the 9 reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. So no one can imitate these symptoms for a very long time, and nor then can they be concealed. So therefore, they are called as reliable symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. Okay, now next, Rupa Goswami describes what is called as Rati Abhas. Okay, read from the screen.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hi.
When neophyte or non-devotees display emotions that resemble the symptoms of bhava, it is known as the Rati Abhasa, a mere reflection of bhava. There are 2 types of Rati Abhasa. 1, Pratibimba, reflective, and 2, Chaya, shadow. Reflection attachment.
Reflective.
Reflective attachment pratibimba. Someone may execute devotional service with an ulterior motive for fruitive gain or liberation. In this case, although the motive is corrupt, the practice is usually quite intense. While performing devotional activities in the association of advanced devotees, such a person may experience symptoms that resemble ecstasy because the genuine ecstasy of advanced devotees are reflecting upon the mirror of his heart. Hare Krishna.
Continue, please.
Rati abhasa, shadow attachment. Chaya rati abhasa. Sometimes a person may execute devotional service out of social convention or vague curiosity. Compared to reflective attachment, this devotional service is less intense, but the motive is not nearly as correct. Such people may exhibit a slight resemblance of ecstatic symptoms, especially when they join kirtana, attending big festivals, visit the holy dhama, or get the occasional association of saintly devotees. The previous type of rati abhasa, pratibimba, more intensely reflects bhava. It is like an image reflected in a mirror. However, chaya rati abhasa, the symptoms are not as clearly reflected. It is more like a shadow cast on the ground. There is only a vague semblance to the original object. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada translates chaya rati abhasa as shadow attachment and pratibimba as rati abhasa as reflective attachment. Srila Prabhupada describes shadow attachment, chaya, as para-transcendental, para-transcendental. Even though it is less intense, shadow attachment, chaya, is better than reflective attachment, pratibimba, because there is less ulterior motive. Hare Krishna.
Okay, continue.
Rati Abhasa. Transforming Rati Abhasa into genuine bhava. In other words, the only way that one can transform his imitative emotions into genuine bhava is by receiving the mercy of a pure devotee. This mercy is attained by service and blocked by offenses. If someone offends a devotee, whatever attachment he has achieved, real or imagined, will wane away to nothing.
Okay, so this is Rati Abhas, means a semblance of Rati or Bhava. So basically the point is that so somebody may be practicing some sort of devotional service. So as is mentioned over here, in the case of Pratibimba attachment, there is some intense practice of devotional service, though with some ulterior motive. And so when such devotees, when they come in the association of more advanced devotees, then they may experience some ecstatic symptoms. So that is what is called as Pratibimba Rati Abhas. And Chaya Rati Abhas means that the devotional service is not very intense, but they don't have so many motives as such. And these people also, when they come in contact with some devotional activities like kirtan or festivals or holy dham, association of saintly devotees, so they also exhibit some ecstatic symptoms. So this is basically what is called as Rati Abhas. Abhas means something which is resembling bhava. So it is not actually bhava, but it is resembling bhava. Why? Because the person is practicing some devotional service and he is influenced by devotional activities of other devotees or the influence of the dham and so on. And so this is basically what is called as Rati Abhas. And if the association with devotees and devotional activities continues, then this Rati Abhas can transform into genuine bhava. Okay, so you can advance to come to that platform. But this Rati Abhas can be destroyed by offenses. And then whatever attachment is there, that also will be nullified. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada explains towards the end of the chapter that therefore one has to be careful not to offend devotees. So even though devotees may accidentally sometimes commit some mistakes and found not living up to the standard of devotional service, one should not be envious of him. So basically he's quoting the famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Apichet Suduracharo Bhajate Mamani Bhak. He's giving the translation to that. And so therefore one should be careful not to offend devotees, because if one offends, then whatever little attachment one has towards the Lord, that also will be nullified. Okay, so that's basically chapter 18. And then we go to chapter 19. That is devotional service and pure love of God, prema. Okay, somebody can read the first two paragraphs.
When one's desire to love Krishna in one's particular relationship becomes intensified, it is known as pure love of Godhead. In the beginning, a devotee is engaged in the regulative principles of devotional service by the order of his spiritual master. When one thereby becomes completely purified of all material contamination, there develops an attachment and taste for devotional service. This taste and attachment, when gradually intensified in the course of time, becomes love. The word love can be actually applied only in relationship with the personality of Godhead. In the material world, love is not applicable at all. What goes on under the name of love in the material world is nothing but lust. There is a gulf of difference between love and lust, like the difference between gold and iron. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is clearly stated that when lust is completely transferred to the Supreme Godhead and the concept of kinship is completely reposed in him, such is accepted as pure love of God by great authorities like Bhishma, Prahlada, Uddhava, and Narada. Great authorities like Bhishma have explained that love of Godhead means completely giving up all so-called love for any other person. According to Bhishma, love means reposing one's affection completely upon one person, withdrawing all affinities for any other person. This pure love can be transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead under two conditions: out of ecstasy and out of the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Hare
Okay,
Krishna.
fine. So we had discussed these points before, the difference between love and lust. So although both of them are similar, but there's a gulf of difference between them. So therefore, love is compared to gold and lust is compared to iron. So both of them are metals, but still there's so much of difference between them. So similarly, lust and love also, both of them appear to be similar, but there is a gulf of difference. And so basically, when we speak of love, as a definition is being given here, love of God, it means completely giving up all so-called love for any other person. Okay, so the love is reposed only on one person, withdrawing all affinities for any other person. So the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Rupa Goswami gives the definition of prema. So this is the definition. Samyan masnita smanto mamatvatishayankitah bhavasa eva sandratma budhai prema nigadyate. When that bhava softens the heart completely, becomes endowed with a great feeling of possessiveness in relation to the Lord, and becomes very much condensed and intensified, it is called prema, love of God, by learned scholars. So as we had discussed when we're discussing bhava, the softening of the heart begins at the platform of bhava. And so that softening of the heart becomes complete at the platform of prema. So that's the meaning of samyan masnita swanto. So the softening of the heart becomes complete. And there is a great mamatva, a sense of ownership, that Krishna is mine. So that's a feeling of possessiveness or ownership of the Lord. That is, that feeling is greatly intensified on the platform of prema. So this is the definition of prema. So the prema swarup lakshana is bhava sa eva sandratma. It is the intensified state of bhava. Okay, so the bhava becomes more intense. That's what is basically prema. And prema's tatastha lakshana is samyan masnita svanto. It completely softens the heart. And another tatastha lakshana is mamatva atishayankitaha, marked by highly possessive ownership of Sri Krishna. So in Bhava Bhakti, one gets a vision of the Lord and understands his eternal relationship with Krishna. However, in Prem Bhakti, one actually enters the Lord's pastimes in one's eternal spiritual identity, overwhelmed with the mood that Krishna is my son, or Krishna is my friend, or Krishna is my lover. Okay, so that's what happens on the platform of Prema. This complete softening of the heart, and there's a highly possessive ownership of Sri Krishna in one's eternal constitutional position. Okay, so one understands one's eternal relationship with Krishna, and in that eternal relationship, one actually enters into Krishna's pastimes. So that's these are the tatastha lakshan of prema. So how one comes to the platform of prema? So basically, there are two ways. One is by the maturation of bhava, and the second is by the Lord's extraordinary mercy. So it can either be from Vedi to Bhava to Prema, or Raganuga to Bhava to Prema. And we already discussed the examples of Vedi Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava to Prema. The example is Narad Muni, and Raganuga to Bhava to Prema. The example is Chandrakanti. Okay, so the same things are mentioned here. Prema arising from the maturation of Bhava. There are two subdivisions of Prema arising from Bhava. One is Veda Bhavato, Prema arising from Bhava, achieved through Vedi sadhana. So there's one verse which Rupa Goswami is quoting, 11.2.40, shows that constantly practicing the regulative principles of devotion service Vedi can arouse Bhava. And the second is Raganugiya Bhavato, Prema arising from Bhava, achieved through Raganuga sadhana. And the example is Chandrakanti. And the second way to come to the platform prema is by the Lord's extraordinary mercy, and the example for that is the gopis. Okay, so you can read from the book now. Ecstasy.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Ecstasy. Ecstatic love of Godhead can be potently invoked simply by following the rules and regulations of devotional service as they are prescribed in scriptures, under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, verse number 40 of Srimad Bhagavatam, this ecstatic love, born of the execution of regulative devotional service, is explained. A devotee in the course of executing the regulative principles of devotional service develops his natural Krishna consciousness, and being thus softened at heart, he chants and dances like a madman. While performing chanting of the holy name of the Lord, he sometimes cries, sometimes talks widely, sometimes sings, and sometimes, without caring for any outside, dances like a madman. In the Padma Purana, there is a statement about ecstatic love born of spontaneous affection. Chandrakanti, a celebrated fair-faced girl, rigidly observed celibacy in order to obtain Krishna as her husband. She always engaged herself in meditating on the transcendental form of the Lord and always chanted the glories of the Lord. She did not desire to accept anyone else as her husband. She had firmly decided that only Lord Krishna would be her husband. Hare Krishna.
Continue.
The Lord's extraordinary mercy. When a devotee is found to be always associated with the Lord in ecstatic love, it is to be understood that such a position has been awarded by the Lord himself out of his causeless extraordinary mercy. An example of such extraordinary mercy is given in 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse number 7 of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, the gopis in Vrindavana did not study the Vedas to achieve me, nor had they ever been in the holy places of pilgrimage, nor did they devotedly execute any regulative principle, nor did they undergo any kind of austerity. It is simply by my association that they have attained the highest perfection of devotional service. From the example of Chandrakanti as found in the Padma Purana and from the examples of the Gopi as found in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it appears that a devotee who always thinks of Krishna and who always chants his his glories in ecstatic love, regardless of his condition, will attain the highest perfection of unalloyed devotional love due to Lord Krishna's extraordinary mercy. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. If a person worships, adores, and loves Hari, the Supreme Lord, he should be understood to have finished all kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for self-realization. On the other hand, if after undergoing all types of austerities, penances, and mystic yoga practices, but does not develop such love for Hari, then all his performances are to be considered a useless waste of time. If someone always sees Krishna inside and outside, then it is to be understood that he has surpassed all austerities and penances for self-realization. And if after executing all kinds of penances and austerities, one cannot always see Krishna inside and outside, then he has executed his performances uselessly.
Okay, fine. So this is the example of the Lord's extraordinary mercy, that is the gopis, who very spontaneously are attracted to Krishna. Now, the rest of the part there is basically the two types of prema. So now we can read from the screen. Somebody else can read.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Right.
Go ahead, Mataji, sorry.
Yeah. Two types of prema. There are two types of prema bhakti. Mahatmya jnana. Prema mixed with knowledge of the Lord's majesty, and to kevala, unmixed, pure prema. Srila Prabhupada says that prema can be placed under two headings. One is profound veneration for the greatness of the Lord, and the other is once being automatically attracted to Krishna without any extraneous consideration. Mahatmya Jnana Prema. Narada Pancharatra illustrates prema imbued with knowledge of the Lord's greatness. If on account of profound veneration for the greatness of the Supreme Lord, one attains a great affection and steady love for him, one is certainly assured of achieving the four kinds of Vaishnava liberation. Devotees who achieved bhava from Vaidhi sadhana can attain Mahatmya Jnana Prema. Kevala Prema. Kevala Prema, pure and one-pointed prema, is not even slightly mixed with any aspiration or interest, such as aspiration for Vaikuntha liberation or interest in the Lord's profound power and opulence.
Okay, so the Mahatmya Gyan Prema means that the devotee has knowledge of the Lord's absolute position as the absolute truth, as Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. So all this knowledge one has. One knows that he's the Paramatma within the heart of all living entities. So just like we see in the case of the devotees in Dwarka, like Uddhav and so many other devotees, so they knew that Krishna is the Paramatma in all living beings, and they knew his absolute position. They knew all that. So that is what is called as Mahatmya Gyan Prem. But Kevala Prem, one is not influenced by that knowledge of Krishna's majesty. One may know about it, but that does not become the cause for loving the Lord. So that is the case of the Vrajvasis. So the Vrajvasis did not love Krishna because he's God. They loved him just because he's Krishna. So there was no other reason for loving Krishna. They spontaneously became attracted to Krishna. And even though they knew Krishna's greatness, but that was not the cause for loving Krishna. So that is what is called as Kevala Prem. Okay, and the last part of the chapter, Rupa Goswami basically describes the 9 stages of bhakti. Adav Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Tata Bhajana Kriya Tato Anartha Nivritti Syat Tato Nishtha Ruchis Tata Asaktis Tato Bhavas Tata Prema Bhyutanchati Sadhakanam Ayam Premna Pradur Bhave Bhavet Kramaha. And Srila Prabhupada describes all these stages without giving the Sanskrit names, but he describes all these stages. So now somebody can just read the last part of the chapter. association with pure devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Giriraj Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. Association with pure devotees. Although many different processes for developing love of Godhead have been explained so far, Srila Rupa Goswami now gives us a general description of how one can best achieve such a high position. The beginning of ecstatic love of Godhead is basically faith. There are many societies and associations of pure devotees. And if someone with just a little faith begins to associate with such societies, his advancements to pure devotional service is rapid. The influence of a pure devotee is such that if someone comes to associate with him with a little faith, one gets the chance of hearing about the Lord from authoritative scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, by the mercy of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart, one gradually develops his faith in the descriptions of such authoritative scriptures. This is the first stage of association with pure devotees. In the second stage, after one becomes a little advanced and mature, he automatically offers to follow the principles of devotional service under the guidance of the pure devotee and accepts him as a spiritual master. In the next stage, under the guidance of the spiritual master, the devotee executes regulative devotional service. And as a result of such activities, he becomes freed from all unwanted occupations. When he is freed from unwanted occupations, his faith becomes steadily fixed, and he develops a transcendental taste for devotional service, then attachment, then ecstasies. And in the last stage, there is pure love of Godhead. These are the different stages of the development of pure love.
Continue, please, to the end.
Yeah, actually, I'll give it to Sri Gopal Prabhu. You can read. Sri Gopal Prabhu, please continue from here.
Okay.
Sri Gopal.
Yeah, Prabhuji. So I need to start from only the most fortunate persons can achieve such success in life. Those who are simply academic students of the Vedic scriptures cannot appreciate how such a development takes place. In the Narada Pancharatra, Lord Shiva therefore tells Parvati, "My dear Supreme Goddess, you may know from me that any person who has developed the ecstasy of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who is always merged in transcendental bliss on account of this love cannot even perceive the material distress or happiness coming from the body or mind. The affection and dealings of love that are different branches of the original tree of love precede many varieties of affectionate manifestations that will not be discussed here. These different manifestations have been described by Sanatan Goswami in his Bhagavatamrita. Although the subject of such affections and dealings of love is very confidential, Sanatan Goswami has described them very explicitly. Sri Rupa Goswami thus concludes the first division of the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, offering up his treatise for transcendental pleasure of Sanatan Goswami, who established the transcendental beauty and of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. It appears from this statement that the great Srila Jiva Goswami was not yet active when Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu was written. Hare Krishna.
Okay, that ends the Bhaktivedanta summary study of the first division of the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, up to the descriptions of ecstatic love of Godhead, which are to follow next. Okay, any questions? Okay, somebody can read the translation of these verses from the screen.
Please read, Prabhu.
From Shraddha to Prema. In the beginning, there must be faith. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principle under his orders. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. Thereafter, one develops taste and attachment. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of devotional service according to the regulative principles. Gradually, emotion intensify, and finally, there is an awakening of love. This is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotees interested in Krishna consciousness.
Okay, fine. Okay. Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, can you please explain the difference between Tatastha Lakshan and Swarup Lakshan one more time?
Tatastha and Swarup Lakshan of what?
Bhava Bhakti, right, Prabhuji?
Okay, so everywhere there was Swarup and Tatastha Lakshan. Bhava Bhakti also, Prem Bhakti also.
So in Bhava Bhakti, can you explain once the difference between the two?
So basically the Swarup Lakshan means these are the primary characteristics which have to be there in order to say that this is Bhava Bhakti. So the primary characteristic of Bhava Bhakti is that the devotee is situated on the platform of Shuddha Sattva. That is pure goodness. That means it is on the transcendental platform beyond the three modes. That is Shuddha Sattva. That is the primary characteristic. That means that has to be there. It's primary. Primary means it has to be there. Then only one can be said to be on the platform Bhava. He has to be on the liberated platform beyond the influence of three modes. And the Tatastha Lakshan may not be immediately there, but they will eventually develop. That is the softening of the heart and the development of all those other emotions. So that will eventually develop. So that is what they're called as Tatastha Lakshan.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare. Any other questions? Okay, fine. So if there are no more questions, we will conclude. So that's the conclusion of the Eastern division of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is basically talking about, essentially speaking about the Vedi Sadhana Bhakti, but then also touching upon Raganuga, Bhava, and Prema. Okay, so thank you all very much for your kind attention. So I'd like to take this opportunity to especially thank Lilananda Prabhu for kindly allowing us to render this service. And I would also like to thank all the other students for participating in this Bhakti Shastri course. Almost now, I think so it is about 1 year. The course had started last June. And so all of you have nicely participated in this course and finished all the different units. So we are extremely grateful to all of you for your enthusiastic participation in spite of all your busy schedules. So in spite of all the challenges, you have taken part in the course. So thank you all very much. And we look forward to your association again in the future. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srila Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, are you there, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Yeah, Prabhuji, this is Lilananda, Prabhuji. Sorry, I'm actually unwell, so I'm not able to on the camera. But
Oh,
I'm
I
very
see.
grateful, Prabhuji. I'm very grateful, Prabhuji, that so many classes were conducted, and tough schedules were there even for the devotees, and somehow everything got wrapped up on time, Prabhuji. So very, very grateful, Prabhu. Please forgive me and anyone else,
No, no
for
problem.
anything at all we would have done, inappropriately, or we would not have behaved in a right Vaishnava etiquette.
No, no
So
problem.
please forgive, Prabhuji. And we are really looking forward to get personal association of all the, gurus, all the Krishna gurus that were given me these classes, including your grace, sometime in July. So really looking forward to that, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Okay,
Thank
so
you. Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Let us
Hope
thank
you recover
Vamsi Vadhan
soon.
Prabhu, 3 loud Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.